Hello, welcome to another Chambers and Gaming video. Today I will be giving a response to Krasio on speedrun.com. I have lots of thoughts and ideas to share for all of you. For those who are not aware, recently I had received, and see if I can get this captured here from my YouTube video. Right here, Arthur Krasio, you can see it right here. This run not being on the leaderboard is crazy. It's one of the best times. I'll submit it for you since I'm a moderator for the leaderboard and have that ability. This was sent about 2 weeks ago. I haven't been getting consistent notifications, so I don't always get to see comments that are being made for some reason. But I stated on there 2 hours ago of the making of this video that I do not consent to my content being placed on the leaderboard, nor was this in good faith, since the submission states, quote, "This run was submitted by Krasio. For the sake of documenting the accurate world record history, please do not support the speedrunner. They are homophobic, transphobic, and anti-choice bigot." I go on to say that my positions on Catholic ethics and natural law are not gaming related, even if they are relevant in private discussions as people work out their own personal ethics and dialogue with others. These comments are not charitable and are a direct attack against my character. I request that my content be removed from speedrun.com, and as a matter of integrity, I think that you, Krasio, owe the site an apology for using their platform to issue a personal attack upon a gamer. I go on to say, if you personally want to believe that all Catholics are homophobic, transphobic, and anti-choice bigots, simply because they do not agree with you as to sexual ethics, the nature of the human person, and the intrinsic dignity of the unborn, then that is a view that you can entertain, but it is erroneous and uncharitable. I will you good for your own sake. There are better ways to conduct yourself in relation to others. As we could see here on speedrun.com, I believe this is fully captured. This individual, this moderator, I don't know how long they've been moderating Fire and Ice NES on speedrun.com. Krasio stated, "This run was submitted by Krasio. For the sake of documenting the accurate world record history, please do not support the speedrunner. They are homophobic, transphobic, and anti-choice bigot." Now, for those who are not aware, I am a Roman Catholic. I used to do a lot of speedrunning in the speedrunning community. I had some world records. I did a lot of gaming tutorials. I did commentaries. I made a lot of contributions to games that every world record going forward will contain. And I spent a lot of time digging into the code, playing the game, and seeing ways that I can make contributions to each of these marvelous, wonderful games that we have at our disposal. For those who are not aware, some years ago I created a team called Retro Craze. You can actually see it here at the very bottom of my YouTube video here, Retro Craze. And the whole purpose of it was to do what I have always done in the world of gaming, throughout the 5 years, building up to partner and so on and so forth on my Twitch channel, which essentially was to create a kind of non-gaming atmosphere. Like when I played games, I focused on the games. I made comments upon the game. I tried my best to try to focus on the gaming itself so that I could stream to the broadest audience possible. Um, I generally avoided politics, religion, ethics, philosophy, these sorts of things. And so when I created Retro Craze, I wanted the same gaming only kind of content. I wanted to make sure that, hey, if we disagreed about sexual ethics, or we disagreed about politics, or we disagreed about nature of the human person, or the intrinsic dignity of the unborn, or whatever our conscience is telling us, that these weren't going to be the determining factor as to whether or not we supported a retro gaming speedrunner, for instance. And as such, I wanted to make sure it was going to be completely gaming only gaming tags, only gaming content. And if there were those who weren't only using gaming only tags, that there were other teams I could recommend to them if they wanted to utilize that. I myself removed myself from Retro Craze because I wanted to expand my channel. I wanted to engage a little bit more in the realm of non-gaming, and I began doing just chatting streams about philosophy and religion and ethics and so on and so forth. As such, though, I do think that overall there needs to be a more charitable approach that we have towards people as individuals. Like, for example, with this personal attack, with speedrun.com being utilized as a platform to attack another gamer in a non-gaming matter, we are experiencing a kind of uncharitable dialogue amongst ourselves. Now, it's true that in the entire intellectual landscape that there exists diversity of ideas and thoughts, and despite disagreements, you will find that I have the capacity to dialogue with anybody from any walk of life, and to be able to care for them and to engage in a common exploration of ideas, where there's a mutual exchange of ideas, the development of mutual understanding so that we can understand what it is that we're communicating to one another. And I've tried my best to take that kind of approach in talking with people. That has not always been the approach I've taken. I've tried different approaches over the course of time, and I have personally found that taking a more rationalistic approach and being willing to dialogue with people has been very important to me. Because above all, I want to be able to communicate my care and my concern. I desire for people to know that I will their good for their own sake. And that's part of what I included in my response. I know within the retro community, there is quite a bit of people who are pro-LGBT. And I have come to understand this. I've come to accept that within this particular hobby bubble, um, there's probably not going to be a lot of Roman Catholics, within that circle. And so I've kind of accepted the fact that there may be a lot of people who would have critiques of the ideas that I have. Obviously, as a Roman Catholic, I hold firmly to what Holy Mother Church says. I follow all of Catholic teachings. I find them personally convincing, and of the ethics, I find them very convicting concerning my own self and wanting to better myself and understand philosophy and of the sort. But much of what we really are experiencing is philosophical, ideological conflict that exists between people. And I really don't think that's appropriate for a gaming space where we're trying to enjoy the games together. And we can do this. We absolutely can do this without policing the thoughts of other people. And I do believe that this is possible. We can get to this point where we are willing to allow people on leaderboards and allow people into speedrun races and on teams, despite coming from different backgrounds. And this has always been okay. The kind of gatekeeping or ideological warfare that ends up being waged by some will say, well, you don't deserve to be on a leaderboard unless you think this. Or if you hold to this particular point in philosophy, then we're going to remove you as being a potential participant in a speedrun event. And I think that is really antithetical to the idea of being able to enjoy something together as human beings, something that I would think that would be even more fundamental in a sense, for us to enjoy the interpersonal relationships. And I myself had done that for many, many years. And I think we can do better. Some years ago, I had someone reach out to me. They attacked me in a Discord message, and they said to me that, because of this event, because of what they think that I have done, it has caused all of us to look like fools. And all I could say is, if we can talk about it, we can have some sort of dialogue. There has been a breakdown in communication. I have people that I used to be friends with who will say to me, you have done this, you have done that, therefore, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And when I try to engage them and say, well, why don't we talk about that? Because it might not be quite what you think that it is. It might not be what other people are saying that it is. You're more influenced what other people have to say about me, as opposed to discerning for yourself exactly where I stand in all of this. And as hard as it may seem to some people, I absolutely love all of you. I absolutely love all of you. I will your good for your own sake. And people have a tendency not to understand how that's even possible. How can I care about you if I disagree with you on some ideas? For some people, their ideas are themselves. They have a certain ideology about themselves. And sure, I mean, I think that I am created in the image and likeness of God. That's who I am. You can attack that all day long, and it doesn't have any emotional effect upon me whatsoever. It doesn't cause psychological distress. It doesn't cause me to lash out irrationally against other people if they don't also think the same way about me as I think about myself. But we may experience that by observing what other people do, how they react to those sorts of things. So, for example, in the smear against myself on speedrun.com from Krasio, they said that I'm homophobic, I'm transphobic, I'm an anti-choice bigot. And I can't help to think to myself, does everybody get to call somebody else a bigot if they may have a more restricted view of ethics, so to speak? If there are people out there, for example, who like to engage in acts with animals or with incest or with, you just fill in the gaps of all the things that they would probably say are not appropriate sexual behaviors. They, whom you critique, could say that you're a bigot, but you think that you're not a bigot because you think that your ethics is right. Well, guess what? The same thing happens in my case. You call me a bigot because you think that I have, a more restricted view of ethics, of what is healthy, allowable, morally acts that one can engage in. Obviously, as a Roman Catholic, yeah, sure, I do think I do follow natural law. I do look at the telos of the body, the end towards which is intrinsic to each of our acts, that it has a meaning to it that's inherent. And I understand that there are people who don't follow this philosophy. Okay, some people may have been influenced, say, by Humean ethics, where he proposes a kind of gap between, say, the isness of something and the oughtness of something, applying Humean ethics. Some may approach this through, say, existentialism, through the philosophy of Sartre, and propose that in the matter of metaphysics, that existence precedes essence, as opposed to the traditional Aristotelian Thomistic conception of classical philosophy that exists, that the essence precedes existence. And so there's this kind of defining of oneself, because there doesn't exist within ourselves an inherent meaning or an intrinsic value, which is typical of a classical theistic philosophy. So I've come to recognize that there are going to be these different philosophical conflicts that can exist between us as gamers. And that's to be understood, that in the world in general, there is a very broad landscape of intellectual thought on these particular issues. But I think that it is improper to become ideological and militant and begin treating people poorly because they don't agree with you. They don't follow your ideology. They don't think about the nature of the human person in the exact same way as you do. And I have a counter proposal. I think that when it comes to video games, we come from a very broad range of thought. We just happen to have a shared passion, a common goal, where we can engage together on a hobby and we can enjoy that hobby together without having to draw into it, to kind of soil, to kind of poison the well. Uh, Ideological conflicts where we are saying that a person does not belong in speedrunning if they're a Catholic. They don't belong in speedrunning unless they believe this or unless they think that. And I believe that is contrary to what we should be doing as human beings when we have a common interest together. We can enjoy that common interest. We can talk about it. We can make tutorials. We can comment on it. We can absolutely enjoy it. But if an individual such as myself doesn't want to get engaged with anything that's non-gaming related that might be a predominant among speedrunners and retro gaming, then that should be okay. Instead, I have been attacked, I have been maligned, and I've been very patient with it over the years. And I think that all of us can do better. We can all do better. It's fine. It's fine for us to just enjoy the games. We can do that. We don't have to go on crusades. We don't have to go on inquisitions to try to figure out who in the retro community is not an LGBT ally. And we need to thrust them out. We need to ostracize them. We have to remove them from participation in games and everything else for no other reason that an individual is a Catholic and they have Catholic thoughts about sexual ethics, the nature of the human person, the intrinsic dignity of the unborn, or sexual ethics. It's okay, right? You're okay. I'm okay. We're just playing the video game. We're just enjoying the video game together, and that's fine. And I have done my absolute best to try to reason with people, and I can guarantee you, every single DM that I have ever received on any platform where somebody from the LGBT community, somebody who refers to themselves as homosexual, or somebody who refers to themselves as trans-identifying, when 99% of the time when they actually talked with me personally, they came to understand that I cared for them, I cared about gaming, and that I wasn't what other people think that I am. I am just thoroughly convinced and convicted of Catholic teaching. I'm a Christian, I'm a Roman Catholic. These are my convictions, but I'm not mean to anybody about it at all. I'm not. I don't go out of my way to be malicious and uncharitable. Instead, I have dialogues with people. I talk with them if they want to talk with me. I understand that not everybody's a Catholic. I understand that not everybody's going to have the same convictions and the intellectual commitments and the philosophical persuasions that move me. Okay, I'm more of an Aristotelian, Thomistic thinker. And I do recognize that there are people who have been influenced by many different streams and threads of modern philosophy, and they may think thoughts that they have not even traced back to a particular thinker that may have championed those ideas in recent times. But I don't treat people based on the thoughts that they have. I treat each and every one of you as if you have inherent dignity, that you have intrinsic meaning to yourselves. And when I see people acting uncharitable, I recognize that they are not living their best life. They are not living up to their potential. And that's what pains me more. You can call me names, you can say whatever you want about me, but I don't think it's doing you any good to engage in those things. I think that you can do better. We all can do better in this regard. Over the years, every now and then, I will receive another hate message. Someone will attack me. But very rarely have I ever had people want to just dialogue with me. Like, hey Chambers, I'm kind of interested in what's going on. I'm curious about what your take is on this particular issue. And my take is that nobody within retro gaming should be discriminated against on the basis of anything at all. We're just all human beings playing video games, and we're enjoying the relationships we have with this common interest. I don't want to bring anything else into that. I really don't. You know, over the years, I've seen this happen a lot where a person ends up not being liked by certain people, and all of a sudden their score or their time is not included on a leaderboard, and that leaderboard is weakened as a result of this. It's no longer an objective reflection of reality. It now becomes a list of people who ideologically conform to what the moderators think about non-gaming things. And so what ends up happening is it does not reflect reality at all. It's just those whom they approve of on non-gaming issues, you know. So if you want to exclude all Catholics from retro gaming, you want to remove all Catholics from a leaderboard on speedrun.com or highscore.com or Twin Galaxies or anywhere else. I mean, that is a choice, but I'm going to have to point out that that's ideological warfare. Okay, you're more interested in vetting and gatekeeping everybody because of what their convictions might be. How am I supposed to? I mean, tell me, how am I supposed to follow any strain of thought that I am not personally convinced of? How are you supposed to follow any string of thought that you're not personally convinced of? I have zero expectations of my gaming friends to change their mind about anything. I just like talking to them about video games. And we need to get back to that. That has to be okay. You know, if people get political about it and they're like, well, anybody who voted for Trump, we're not going to allow on the leaderboard. You know, imagine if other people had the influence, other people had the power, and they said, well, if you voted for Kamala Harris or you voted for, you know, somebody else, you know, other than the Republican Party, you're not going to be allowed on the list. You know, I mean, right now, you have the hegemony, you have the cultural influence, you have the positions of power to be able to exclude people from the leaderboard. but it could be a different set of people with an entirely different ideological mission. And they will craft the list in their own image, as opposed to it just being an objective reflection of reality. Maybe that never occurs. Maybe it does. But what it comes down to, though, is that we have to stop policing the thoughts of people. Okay? I have come to be convinced of Catholic ethics, not because I'm hateful, not because I'm a bigot, not because I dislike certain people or I had a bad experience with someone who thought or did certain things. I have become convinced of the philosophical concepts that underlie the whole issue. Now, if you can present to me an even more convincing presentation of an alternative philosophy, you can talk to me. Send me messages. I will dialogue with you. And I will be very good-natured. I would, in good faith, be open to the ideas that are being presented to me. But I cannot be expected to follow any train of thought that is less convincing to me. And it just so happens that any time any human being draws an ethical line and says, I don't think that we should pass this line. I don't think any human should do this thing. I think it's just always going to be bad for them. It's always going to have negative consequences that are bad for them. There's going to be people who fall to the left of that line and people who fall to the right of that line. Now, if you want to be relativistic and say there is no objective value, there are no objective morals, then do not treat me as if there are objective values. But here's the thing. You do think that your values are correct. And you do find me to the left of those values or to the right of those values, and you will critique me. But when you do so in a very uncharitable manner. You're not interested in dialogue. You don't want to enter into good faith discussions. You just want to attack me on social media. And it's not clear to me what you get out of it. Maybe you're virtue signaling. Maybe you like it when other people see you attacking other people. But I can guarantee you that it's very distasteful. It doesn't really do for you what you think that it does for you. Because essentially, I'm not very important in the world of things. Yeah, sure, I've had 13 plus world records. Sure, I've done 2-hour commentaries on games. I've made contributions that have improved the world records on games, and but essentially, I'm not really worth the trouble, right? I'm not worth the free real estate that you give me, where you feel like you have to go out of your way to make comments in public that, hey, by the way, I don't like this guy. You don't have to do that. And believe me, you can get a lot more from people. You can get a lot better from people by conducting yourself in a manner that is more respectable. If you want to attack me, that's an option. I would recommend dialoguing with me. You might actually find that I care about you a great deal. And my ethics might be different than your own. And I might think that there's certain things that you do or believe that could potentially be harmful to you in the long run. But you need to see that coming from care and concern. You need to see that I genuinely want to connect. I genuinely want to be involved in the lives of other people who think differently. And I totally get some people have a really hard time with that. They really do. But all I can say is we can be better than this. We can connect with each other. Because, in a sense, yeah, sure, okay, I follow what the Catholic Church teaches. But nobody's required to listen to what the Catholic Church has to say. And yes, I believe what the Catholic Church teaches. But it doesn't change the way that I may treat somebody. Now, if somebody says to me, I demand from you, from you to think about me through the ideology that exists in my head, you're really asking too much of another human being. If you say the only way to love me, the only way that you can love me is to think the same way that I do, you're asking too much of other people. It's okay. It's all right. Other people can be convinced of different things. And we don't even have to really even fight about those things per se. The only time those things actually become relevant is not on Twitter. It's not on Twitch. It's not in Discord. It's not on any like Facebook or any other kind of social media. It's at the ballot box. In America, specifically, or if you don't even live in America, you can vote in your own country as it relates to policies within our own culture. Now, somebody could potentially be upset with me because, I may have voted for this proposition or I may have voted against this or that candidate. And then try to say, well, because you voted for them, then this candidate did this, or this proposition did that, and this created more tension, more conflict within our culture between different subgroups and so on and so forth. And therefore I'm a wicked, evil, malicious person. I suppose somebody could think that, but remember, I'm not the only one voting for a candidate. I'm like a drop, like a raindrop in the ocean of votes. It has more to do with like a general consensus, whatever the majority seem to vote for a candidate, and and they may have policies that are pro or con certain things, but that's not the end of the world because there's term limits. Guess what? We get to have another vote, and sometimes things swing. Sometimes we get a Trump for 4 years. Sometimes we get an Obama for 8 years, or a Biden, things swing, the pendulum swings. In the long scheme of things are going to be okay. It's not the end of the world when, I wasn't mad when Obama took office. So I wasn't mad when Biden took office, I wasn't mad when Trump took office, I just am convinced of certain policies. I might like certain campaign promises of a particular candidate, and I put my little raindrop of influence on that and see how the culture moves. People could be mad at the culture, but to send one's angst, to send one's vitriol, towards a very particular individual, as if somehow they have single-handedly done this or that in the culture, just because of how they voted. It just doesn't seem very reasonable or even very kind to me. I have a Catholic friend who is very much more on the left, universal health care, stuff like that. And we get along amazingly. Amazingly. I even showed up at his confirmation, his baptism and his confirmation when he became Catholic, And there are certain things in politics that we don't agree with, but man, we have very fruitful and beneficial dialogues with one another. And I absolutely love this guy. Okay, absolutely love this guy, and he cares very deeply for me too. And it's okay, that there's a sense of humanity that exists underneath some of these things. That, from my perspective, that we have this dignity about us, and we can talk about these things. And I get it. I think in part some of this is that some people's ideologies are so deeply rooted in their identity that unless you accept my ideology, you don't accept my identity. You don't accept me, so you can't be my friend. You can't care for me. You can't love me. And I think that whoever grew up within this kind of ideological framework where reality is interpreted, relationships are interpreted through 5 points on the back of a napkin, so much so that if you don't think these same things, that we can't be friends, or that we can't care for each other, and that can't be farther from the truth. We can care for one another. We can will the good of the other. And because I have experienced this in my own life, where I've had connections with people who have different convictions in philosophy and religion and politics and ideology, and I have come to recognize that is the ideal. All right, to be able to have this marketplace of ideas where we can hash out concepts and terms and definitions and perceptions, and we can bring all of our convictions together, and we can dialogue about them in the public square and have a free exchange of ideas, and we can really connect with one another and crafting the kind of society that we want to live in our respective countries. And I've experienced this myself, and believe me, it's far better than the kind of narrow-minded attacks that we can sometimes give. Even though I'm a conservative, I absolutely love listening to Bill Maher. He's more of a center-left, classical, liberal kind of guy, and I don't agree with everything that he says, but I love his humor. I love his new rule videos that he comes out like once a week or something like that, and I have the ability to be able to be friends with most people. The only people I really have a hard time being friends with are people who just for ideological reasons just won't allow themselves to be friends with me. Despite that I desire something different for possible relationships for them. And I mean, if people want to critique me, that's fine. Just remember We radically critique ideas, but we radically love people. And if we understand love to will the good of the other for the sake of the other, like, you don't have to think all the same things I do. That's not how I feel love or appreciation. You know, sure, I can gather a sense of camaraderie with my Catholic friends. And, you know, when I go to Mass and I talk to some of my friends, you know, there's a sense of connection, shared conviction and everything. But not all human relationships have all of those same dynamics to it. It's perfectly fine to be friends with people on some sort of shared interest. If there was a local chess club, for example, when I show up, guess what? We're going to be talking about, you know, whether or not the Scandinavian defense is any good. You know, we're going to be talking about, you know, whether you like the Sicilian or a classical d-pawn, you know, a queen pawn or a king pawn opening, or, you know, those are the kinds of really in-depth conversations I'm going to have with them. Now, if I find out that they don't vote for the same person, they don't have the same philosophical convictions, you know, the same intellectual commitments, that I'm going to try to get them banned from the chess club. And that's just so weird to me. That's not, maybe this is a generational thing. You know, maybe this is just like a subculture that exists on the internet. I don't know. It isn't the way that I have always lived. I've always lived in a nation that has a lot of multiculturalism. I lived in a nation where, you know, there's a wide, broad range of intellectual ideas, and we get to hash those out. I like that. I like going to YouTube and watching a video of people really hashing things out. And that's just the kind of person I am. I can handle all of that. I don't need affirmation. See, I don't hold the ideas I do because they have been affirmed by others. I hold to other ideas because I think that the ideas themselves have a certain convincing power to them, an explanatory power, a persuasion about them that makes sense in a broader philosophical framework. I'm not influenced by whether people like that or not. You know, I don't have any emotional or psychological need for any of that to be affirmed, because it's convincing on an intellectual level. I don't need emotional support. I don't need the camaraderie. I just need to be convinced of an idea. And anytime somebody holds to a proposition, no matter what it is, it's always exclusive. It always excludes what is contradictory to the proposition. So no matter what anybody holds, any idea that you hold, guess what? Make an assertion. State a proposition. Immediately you have excluded all those human beings who hold to the contrary. Is that true? No, you have not excluded them personally. You have rejected the contrariety to your ideas. But you can still treat the people with dignity. You can care for them. Give them food, give them water, give them clothes. You can be their friend. You can talk to them. Have you ever thought about engaging in dialogue with another human being who disagrees with you in order to influence their life for the better? to support them in their life, to help them out, maybe help them move, maybe talk to them about their relationships. Maybe they're struggling with depression. Have you ever thought about like engaging people and helping people who think differently than you? To show them kindness and love and compassion and forgiveness and, be a human being to them. Because sometimes I do see people who aren't doing that. They're militant. They'll attack you. They'll treat you poorly. They won't dialogue with you, but they will directly attack you, treat you poorly. If you're trying to make your ideas, your convictions attractive to somebody else, you're going about it the wrong way. If you want to really change one of your friends' minds on a subject, you're going to have to appeal to their intellect. It's not enough to appeal to emotion. It's not enough to say, hey, there's this case over here of this and that. You have to appeal to their intellect. That's what's going to make a difference. And if you come to me and you say, Chambers, you're homophobic, you're transphobic, you're an anti-choice bigot, you haven't really told me anything about me. You've told me something about yourself. You've told me something about your own character and what you're willing to say to somebody, and reveal that you're willing to do this first as opposed to, actually dialogue with somebody and connect with someone. We could be friends. Like, why couldn't we be friends? I'm not hurting you. You could still make your same choices in the bedroom regardless of what I think. It's not hurting you any. It's not the kind of person I am to readily understand what I often experience myself. I don't understand because it's not the sort of thing. I've never removed anybody from any leaderboard for thinking this or that. I've never treated a gamer less of a gamer because they think this or that. Never. Heck, some years ago, I donated, $100, $200 to a guy who said that they were gay. They wanted an EverDrive. Okay, I'll support your gaming. And I did that despite knowing more personal information about them. I wasn't supporting their lifestyle. I was supporting their gaming. I made a donation to their gaming. Some years ago, I would do these sorts of things. I would support all kinds of streams. I would come on people's streams. I would talk to them. It didn't matter what their politics were. It didn't matter what their philosophical commitments were. It didn't matter their politics. I hosted them. I subscribed to their channel. I supported their gaming. I could do this. This is an easy thing for me to do. I just made connections and I cared for people. And but when people found out that I don't agree with them on certain particulars, all of a sudden they treated me differently. Like it didn't matter anymore because I was just this monster. I had been vilified. I had been made into this kind of villain. for people to attack. And I can't help but think, why does your ideology lead you to attack another human being for any reason? You know, I'm not doing anything. You know, I'm going to mass on Sunday. Hey, Eric, welcome in. I'm going to mass on Sunday. Like, how is that affecting you? You know, I go to mass on Sunday and I make a donation of $100 to somebody of a different philosophical persuasion, because they have a donation bar and they're trying to get an EverDrive. They want to play more games, and I support their gaming. I mean, how does that hurt anybody? You know, and I don't have to allow my Twitch stream or retro craze or anything related to my gaming to be associated with anything that I don't want it to be associated with. If it's gaming, let's do it. You know, um, let's connect on gaming. I can do that. But for whatever reason, people wanted to turn it into like an ideological war. They wanted to attack. They wanted to create. Like I never went out of my way. Like on my channel, I didn't care what people talked about. I mean, I preferred that it was about gaming. I remember way back when, when Arcus was doing his world record attempts on Ninja Gaiden, and I enjoyed the environment. It was all about maybe like food and playing the game, and there was something about the culture of just sticking to the games. And if he ate a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or or his cat, gosh, what's his name? Jojo. It was just family friendly. It was just about the games and just basic stuff in life and things that everybody could agree to. Things that were part of the broadest audience possible, and everything was fine in that regard. And I remember being influenced by Arcus, and I said to myself, that's the kind of stream that I want. That's the kind of streams I want associated with Retro Craze, was Arcus. Arcus 87. That's the stream I wanted. Those are the streams. I wanted nothing but Arcus 87s all in Retro Craze. That's what I wanted. It was just good, wholesome, enjoyable, family-friendly, fun that just was the speed running. And I was like, that's who I want to be when I grow up, That's the kind of culture, that's the kind of environment I want to create. Anybody could come and support Arcus. Anybody could come and enjoy the video games and comment upon them. And Arcus had a huge impact on me and the kind of streamer that I became. And Arcus is the primary reason why I created Retro Craze to be the way that it is. I wanted everybody to just get along and enjoy the video games and not have any of the non-gaming elements, And despite the way that people ended up acting, I tried my absolute best. Always not perfect. Always not perfect. I can get mad too. I can get mad too. Where I try to respond to these sorts of things. And I did. I took my time. I spent a couple of weeks thinking about how to respond to the retro craze stuff. And, I took my time writing out a response, thinking about the philosophical implications, the practical impact, the what I may have done wrong or could have done differently. And it wasn't good enough for people because all they wanted was ideological conformity. All they wanted was for me to use my platform for this non-gaming thing, for this particular philosophical approach to the nature of the human person, this particular approach to interpreting science and all this other stuff. And I just wanted to play video games, and it didn't make sense to me. And that's why it took me so long to think through it. I didn't understand. Why are we talking about this? Why is my Catholicism being used as the basis to attack me? And some people were like, well, you're hiding behind, the church or whatnot. And it's like, no, I'm part of the church. These are my convictions. And they're not my convictions because the church holds them. I have found what the church holds to be convincing. And I have found that to be the case in all its teachings. And so where else am I supposed to go? What else am I supposed to do? And I did my best not to push that on anybody, not to, debate with anybody. I just played video games, and I wanted my gaming to be just gaming. And some people didn't want that, and I didn't understand. I spent a lot of time trying to process, getting my mind around an ideology that was not my own and the militant nature in which it was enforced and the way people were being vetted through the scheme. And it didn't make any sense to me. It perhaps does to those who may be part of that. But it wasn't something that seemed natural or charitable in that regard. So when it comes to these sorts of things, I have requested that my gaming performance be removed from speedrun.com. I removed my times from speedrun.com. I didn't want to be involved in the website. I didn't want to be involved in retro speedrunning community. I didn't want to be involved in any of those sorts of things anymore. I just wanted to play my games, whatever that game may be that I'm interested in at the time. I didn't want to get wrapped up. I didn't want to get drawn into things that other people were doing that weren't related to video games. And I think that a lot of other people didn't understand that as well. Like, why does Chambers not do this? Why does Chambers not support that? And it's like, I just want to play the game. Is this okay? I don't want to get wrapped up into drama. I don't want to get wrapped up into politics and social groups and tensions between people and disagreements on leaderboards and all of that stuff. I didn't want to be involved in those sorts of things anymore. And I think a lot of people who aren't vocal feel the same way. And I don't think there's anything that I can actually say that is going to lead somebody to recognize the goodness of my heart and the efforts and time that I have put into gaming so that other people can enjoy them at a higher level, regardless of where people come from and what they think and feel and everything else. I don't know if it's my mentality is the kind of mentality that can be understood by some people. And I have been highly criticized for it. And I guess in some way I understand, but it's not how I think. It's not how I treat people. I don't put human beings into categories based on their thoughts. I don't treat people differently based on who may be in one category or another. I try to treat everybody equally with dignity, even if I think that their behaviors or their thoughts are undignified. I have always treated people to the best of my ability, though not perfect, with dignity, and to incorporate people in our common goal in our interactions with one another. And I don't know what else I can say. I don't know what else I can do. If you say to me, Chambers, the only way that we will like you is if you're not a Catholic. The only way that we'll accept you as a speedrunner is if that you're not convinced by Catholic teaching. The only way that I could care about you as a person and be your friend is if your conscience was not formed by Catholic teaching. And if somebody says that to me, I have to say, you're asking too much, because I'm not going to set aside those things which are the most convincing things which my intellect has been presented with, simply because you're going to be mean to me. I guess all I can say is, please, by all means, dialogue with me. If you don't want to dialogue with me, be charitable about it. I think that's what everybody wants for themselves, isn't it? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Don't do unto others as you would not have them do to you. If you want respect, you want dignity, understand that it's going to be on the basis of your humanity. And it's not necessarily going to be what you think. We're not the sum of our thoughts and feelings. Thoughts and feelings are concomitant with being a human being, but as a human being, we deserve better. If you say to me that, well, to be human is to be this or to be that, and if I don't think that, you think that I'm dehumanizing you, it's like, no. It's about philosophical commitments. It's about being convinced by a set of propositions because they're rooted in natural law, or they're being rooted in a series of ethical considerations. And we all do it. Of course we do. I've never met a person who thinks that a certain act was wrong. You know, I've never met a person who said there isn't a single ideation that a human being can have that he ought not to entertain. There is not an inclination that a human can experience that we ought not to explore. Everybody does this. Everybody does. And we're trying to figure out how we are supposed to live with one another, how we are supposed to understand reality and meaning and all of the sort. And we all have that dignity to be able to journey intellectually as we try to hash out these difficult concepts. I know personally I'm not very influenced by the culture or the time. You know, you marry the spirit of this age, you'll find yourself widowed in the next. I'm more interested in the timeless truths that have come down through the millennia, and they may not be popular among certain subgroups. They may not be praiseworthy among those who are influential in certain pockets of society, certain subcultures, but I find them convincing. And I hold to them not to be mean to others. I hold them because they're convincing. And I'm not mean to people. I don't go out of my way to be malicious. I don't know how many times I could say that. I think to some people, if you don't think the way I think, if you don't feel the way that I feel, therefore you can't love me. You can't care for me. You're being mean. No. What if I said all that stuff? You're a non-Catholic. You don't have the same ethical positions. You don't have the same intellectual commitments. You don't have the same philosophical persuasion. Therefore, you can't love me. I mean, that's just so weird to me. I don't know how to grasp at that. And I've never met another human being who thought differently than I do on a subject that has ever influenced me personally. Never. Absolutely never. And I don't know why we get so mad at each other. Like honestly, I don't get it. All right. I guess that's all I have to say today. I wish everybody well. Obviously, comment on the video if you have any questions or anything. But I think for the most part, I kind of laid out what I had in mind. And so hopefully this starts some good dialogue among some folk and, you know, find a better way forward than what we often see from people. I think we could do better. So God bless everybody. Have a great night.